It's Monday noon, the time is here. Shane and Abhi, loud and clear. Pacific vibes, we bring the heat. AI agents can't be beat. AI agents hour, let's go. News and guests, the big show. Solving problems, we do it live. Stay informed, it's a vibe. Building agents that work for you. Making moves, we see it through. Every week, a brand new show. Tag along and watch your knowledge grow. AI agents hour, let's go. News and guests, the big show. Answering questions, we arrive. Every Monday, come alive. We want reviews, but only if it's a 5. We share the drama, we got the drive. Stay in the loop, it's the place to be. Shane and Abhi setting you free. Agents Hour, here to stay. Tune in Mondays, make your day. From the news to the problem solved. AI world, get involved.
Every week in AI, something insane happens.
And there's so much drama. Every Monday, we break it down live.
We do the news, we bring on guests building in the space.
And we go deep into the stuff that actually matters.
Agents Hour, every Monday, noon Pacific.
Follow. Don't miss it. Peace.
This is Agents Hour with Shane Thomas and Abhi Aiyer.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Agents Hour. We do this every Monday. We're here. I'm Shane. I'm here with Abhi. We're both two of the co-founders of Mastra, and we're going to talk about the news. We're going to bring on a guest today. We're going to talk a little bit about software factories. We're going to be here for the next 90 minutes or so hanging out. So if you are joining us live, thanks for hanging out. Make sure to leave a comment, ask questions along the way. We'll pull it up on the show. And if you're tuning in later, thanks. Abhi, what's going on, dude?
What's up, dude? I'm surviving the heat. Still in Paris right now, but it's a lot cooler. So
Yeah, I
that's
heard
good.
it's getting a little bit better.
Yeah, it's getting a little bit better. Still sweating my ass off for some reason, but getting better.
Yeah, even too used to the San Francisco weather, you know? It's cool all the time. Never gets too hot.
Dude, they're so okay. You're gonna never hear me say this. Well, one is always true. I'm like when I travel a lot, I get homesick. I definitely miss my mom, which is understandable. And I'm starting to miss San Francisco, which you would never hear that out of my mouth, but I'm starting to miss it.
Yeah, normally you're like,
Weather-wise, food, etc.
yeah, normally you're like, I
missing
gotta
it.
get out of there.
Yeah, but I'm missing it right now.
Yeah. All right. Well, we got a good show lined up today. So we're gonna start off just with some lighthearted stuff. I saw this post and I thought it was pretty funny. I thought it was worth talking about. I'll read it out loud because I think it lands better. And we like to pay attention to those who might be listening on audio as well. So close your eyes, I guess. Imagine telling someone it's 1999. Imagine telling someone the year is 2026. The president is Donald Trump in his second non-consecutive term. The richest man in the world is PayPal co-founder Elon Musk, but not because of fintech or PayPal, because of rockets, electric cars, AI satellites, brain chips, and something called Boring Company. Apple is worth trillions, but its main business isn't computers. It's selling glass rectangles everyone stares at for 9 hours a day. People don't watch TV. They watch teenagers explain geopolitics, finance, and relationship advice in 60-second videos. The biggest taxi company owns no taxis. The biggest hotel company owns no hotels. The most powerful media companies are social networks where everyone argues with strangers for free. Kids are making millions filming themselves playing video games. AI robots write emails, code, legal memos, songs, essays, and breakup texts. The internet is mostly bots arguing with humans who are trying to prove they aren't bots. You can summon a car, groceries, a doctor, a date, a private jet, or a dog walker from your phone. People pay real money for invisible currencies, digital monkeys, AI girlfriends, and pictures that disappear after 24 hours. The richest companies in the world don't sell oil, steel, or cars. They sell attention, compute, data, and addiction. And somehow, after all that, everyone is still using Excel.
Holy shit, that's such a masterful post.
Yeah.
That's so good, dude.
So, first of all, if you do think back, that's what, 27 years? That's pretty wild, right?
Yeah.
That's quite a bit of change in, a relatively short time frame. It's long to us, it seems like a long
We
time.
lived it.
Yeah, we lived it. But if you think back and you told me that, in 1999, I would be pretty shocked. I think most people would be, but it doesn't feel like we're in some futuristic society.
Dude, in 1999, if you told me the Power Rangers were going to end, I would be like, nah, dude, no way.
But
So much
Pokemon
has
lives
happened.
on.
Oh, that's another thing they forgot. Like, oh yeah, like the cards you're collecting would be worth thousands and thousands of dollars now.
Yeah, but it kind of puts things in perspective. It's, it sounds dystopian when you hear it. It doesn't quite, completely feel dystopian, although there are parts of it that do. Yeah, just a wild timeline. All right, let's talk about something a little bit more relatable to our day-to-day. There's been a lot of talk, and we had Dex on. If you watched the show last week, we talked about software factories. Everyone's trying to determine, how do I build a software factory? How do I improve the software factory of my own? If you're watching this, you're probably some kind of developer or builder. You might be working on a team. You might be hearing your management or leaders or even other engineers talking about how do we make our team into a software factory? How do we automate our SDLC? Like, those are the things I keep hearing over and over and over again. And so, first of all, I thought this post isn't exactly tied to that, but it is somewhat related in that. So that's the wrong screen. Let's try to get the right screen. No. Struggling today. It's like it's my first time. Got it. All right. This is from Boris from, of course, from Cloud Code fame. And Boris says, as engineering, product design, DS, etc., melt into a new kind of role, I was reflecting on what roles might look like in the future. For example, when I look at the Claude Code team, I see what I think is 5 archetypes. 1, prototyper, comes up with brand new ideas, churns out many ideas, most of which don't ship, aka burns a lot of tokens.
Yep.
2,
Token burner.
builder, quickly turns a prototyper idea into production-grade product or infra. 3, sweeper, cleans up the UI, simplifies the code and system, unships, optimizes performance. 4, grower, takes a product that has been built and iterates on it to improve product market fit. 5, maintainer, owns a mature system to make it secure, reliable, fast, and efficient as it scales. Many people span across 2 roles and sometimes 3 roles. I also noticed that these roles are not really tied to a job function, e.g. across Anthropic, some designers match category 1, some 2, some 3, same for engineers, PMs, DS. A healthy team needs a mix of these, depending on the product. So I'm not going to finish reading it, but you get the general idea.
Yeah.
I guess
What's your
take?
The 2 comments here are from homies from RYC batch too. Ishan and Abhi.
Yeah.
So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, and they're like, modeling regular human behavior seems to always be the answer. This is just a company. And then isn't that just PM, engineer, QA, sales solution, DevOps? And I think in one part they're right. This is not some mind-blowing thing from Boris, because it's, if you went back and you did this pre-AI, it's roughly the same thing. I think where I see the difference is maybe the roles are not quite as locked. They're a little bit more fluid. Where you would never have like a PM who could maybe be the prototyper and a grower. But maybe now they can't do all of it, but they can do more of that stuff, right? And maybe design can play a little bit more in the engineering. Or maybe you have a product focused engineer who wouldn't have had the time to really think about the product parts, and now they can be the prototyper rather than just, the maintainer.
I think the roles are like everybody's roles are evolving where they have to do more because you have less code to worry about, right? But I mean, if I we kind of position this stuff on our team, and the same archetypes kind of applied to the people that we have, and it was very simple or very easy to see what their main archetype was, and then where the other ones that they maybe now have, because before, they would be just the sweeper or the builder or whatever. I think it's just natural because we can do more with our time because we're not worrying about all the code all the time. But like, for example, like Tony on our team, he's a sweeper, for sure. Like even if before AI, with AI, he's always gonna be the guy to clean up our shit, and make it like the right way and do the right thing. Now he can just do more of it,
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, maybe it does allow you to expand into one area where you normally would have had to been limited to one, right?
Yeah.
So I think that is maybe the difference is before you could only really live in one bucket, and now you have the ability to maybe be across a few of them.
Yeah. Which archetype? I guess I don't know. I don't really like these archetypes that he presented here, but because he works at Claude, then he gets the 2 million views. Which one were you before AI, and which one are you now?
So as, I would say as an engineer, before moving more into product and management, I was definitely just like the builder, right? I would part prototyper, but mostly just a builder, right? I would build stuff. I would be relatively production grade, but I need a sweeper or growers to come in and help it. And I think I could play a little bit in the grower category too. Like take something and then make it a little bit better. Now being a little bit more on the product side, I'm definitely heavy in 1 and maybe a bit into 4. So I am a prototyper. Most of the stuff that I build doesn't get shipped. Some of it does,
Yeah.
as is, but some of it is taken by the real builders and turned into something that's production ready. So I would say I'm the one that burns a lot of tokens, validates ideas, talks with users, and then the real builders come in and turn it into reality. But then I will also do quite a bit of growing, especially with the framework, with the CLI, all that, where we're iterating constantly, making it better. What about you?
I think before I was a builder, sweeper, maybe. I think now I'm just 1, 2, 3, and then we have built a team that can do 4 and 5. So oftentimes I kind of go from 1 to 2 to 3, and then hand it off, which I think AI has allowed that to happen even more quickly. So that's really cool. Like even today, I was building a prototype, some stuff that I'm now going to build tomorrow. Then I'm going to sweep the next day, and then I'm going to give it off to somebody else.
And one last thing, kind of on this topic, talking about, again, this isn't exactly like software factories, but when you're thinking about team construction, then you're also thinking about how do we make that team more efficient, more effective. A lot of times people are figuring, do I use tools like CodeRabbit in Devon, which we do use a bit internally. We've talked about that. We love CodeRabbit. But we're also building some stuff ourselves to help automate different parts. Really, for us, we want to own a bit of our own destiny. So that's why we built a lot of these tools in-house as well. And we're going to talk a little bit about that this week. So if you're interested in learning more about how we're doing some of the stuff over here and how you can maybe use Mastra or other tools to do so, hosting a webinar with Alex from our team on Wednesday. It's virtual. If you sign up and can't make it live, you'll get the recording, all that. So go to Luma, find Mastra on Luma. It's coming up in a few days.
The best part about that workshop and what stuff that we're building is it's not just going to be like a blog post. You can apply that, and soon we'll have primitives for you to use. So, it doesn't die with the blog post.
Yeah, if you've been following, you've been seeing that we've been shipping a lot of primitives. And, you did a harness-related workshop talking about our new, what we're now calling agent controller class in Mastra. So you can kind of control multiple potential agents, kind of basically build your own Devon Claude code. And there's actually a question about that in the chat. So why don't we bring it up? This is from Medi Games. Says, for agent controller, what chat UI framework would you recommend for like human in the loop and chatting? Was wondering how to use it for the web. Not sure if Assistant UI or Copilot Kit would work here.
Marvin's currently working on making the message format compatible with UI frameworks. So if you ask the question, maybe next week you'll have a different answer. Right now, you vibe code. I would suggest you vibe code something. Next week, I would suggest you use whatever framework you like.
All right. And with that, we have a pretty packed show. We need to get in the news. So let's get into it.
Let's do it.
All right. Welcome, everyone. This is Agents Hour. If you're just tuning in, every week we do the news. This week is no different. And as always, there's a lot to talk about. Got a little drama. We got a lot of news. Let's go ahead and dig into it. Here's a little preview of some of the things we're going to talk about today. So we'll talk about OpenAI to start. So GPT-5.6 kind of launches, I guess. Some semblance of launching. And this is from OpenAI on June 26th. That says, introducing a limited preview of GPT-5.6 Sol, our next generation frontier model, as well as GPT-5.6 Terra, a balanced model for efficient everyday work, and GPT-5.6 Luna, a fast and affordable model for high volume work. So I think there's kind of limitations on who can access this, though, from the sounds of it.
Yep.
And that's kind of, I think frustrating for some folks. So this kind of covers it a bit. The Trump admin has asked OpenAI to stagger the release of GPT 5.6 over security concerns. So on Thursday, CEO Sam Altman told staff that the government will be approving access to GPT 5.6 customer by customer, a highly unusual approach. So this is right on the back of all the Fable government regulation and subsequent shutdown a few weeks ago. What do you think about this?
It's kind of sad because this might be the way models get rolled out from frontier labs as they get more powerful. I think we've set a precedent now that any powerful model that's Fable-like will have to go through this like security review process. And then, funny enough, on the open model side, no one gives a shit, and you can just launch things that are Fable competitive without any U.S. bureaucracy.
Yeah, but I think that's true today. But here's my concern with this. It sets a really bad precedent in that, one, if you're in the US and you want to try to compete in this market, you're not going to be able to anymore. If you're not if you're not really well funded, you're not going to be able to go through all the bureaucracy to get a model released. Unless it's across a more narrow task. Anything that's security related or frontier level, you're probably not going to be able to get out. You're probably not going to be funded enough. So it really stifles competition. It allows a window for open models to really catch up. But also, I would not be surprised if they somehow find ways to regulate, at least in the US, what open models inference providers can run.
Yeah. Like Open Router, Fireworks could all get, like GLM 5.2, they have to like go through some security review or whatever. Which is BS, dude.
And then in hyperscalers might be limited to even not allow their customers to run those. So you might think, well, it's open, I can run it myself. But if the inference provider is not legally allowed to allow you to run that, you're kind of out of luck, at least maybe in the US.
Dude, and Bedrock has this problem already, right? They don't have Opus 4.8, because there's a whole GovCloud issue going on already. So the bureaucracy is here, but now it's impacting the normal folks, not just the GovCloud people.
Yeah, I did hear that supposedly I heard Bedrock might be getting 5.6 soon or something. So yeah, TBD on that, but maybe 5.6 is coming to some of those, at least in a limited preview. Assuming
you're
Sol,
approved. Not the Terra and not the other one.
Yeah,
What are
Exactly.
these fucking names, dude?
So
Anyway.
speaking of names, here's the, kind of how they're thinking about it. Sol, it's like the sun. It's really big. Terra is, like the earth. It's, good sized. And Luna's like a moon. It's smaller. So I guess that's how you can think about it. OpenAI has been, just blasted for their naming conventions before. Maybe they're going to, they're trying to be more Claude-like with Opus, Haiku, Sonnet, the same kind of thing of size, so I'm assuming that's why they're doing it. So OpenAI is following in Anthropic's footsteps, I guess. I think these ones might actually stick just because it does, it gives a little bit of a framing.
Yeah. It's all easier to understand than mini, or, I guess mini is mini, but like, there's 3 levels here now.
Yeah. And so GPT 5.6 Sol is being launched on Cerebras at 750 tokens per second. So that would be pretty incredible if true. We'll see. But sounds like it could be relatively fast. This was a huge thing last week. OpenAI announced we've designed and built our first AI chip, Jalapeno, which is pretty funny. That's kind of a funny name, the Jalapeno chip. It's designed from the ground up by OpenAI and brought to production with Broadcom. Jalapeno is purpose-built for the LLM workloads powering ChatGPT, Codex, the API, and future agentic products. Chips are foundational to AI, and there's more to the post, but what do you think of the spicy jalapeno chip?
I think it's cool that they're doing this, but it really puts their partnerships in question, like who they're getting chips from. So interesting to see what Jensen thinks or anybody else.
Yeah, NVIDIA was on such a tear, though, that there's going to be competition.
Yeah.
Right? There had to be. And if OpenAI can own more of that stack, they're just moving lower level. They probably look at it as competitive advantage.
Yeah, but then what if what if NVIDIA rescinds some allocation? I guess then they'll have to go to Colossus. I'm just kidding. They'll have to go get it from somewhere, unless this chip is that powerful. So we'll see.
And we have some chat saying, really hoping in the EU we'll be getting access to 5.6. And then Mika's 3D says, I see permanent underclass everywhere on Twitter now. China, save us. Yeah, see a lot of that too. All right, let's talk about open models. We talked a lot about GLM 5.2 last week, so we're not going to spend too much time on it. But I think we kind of mentioned this, that in some tasks, GLM 5.2 seems to beat Opus, not in everything. We went through that last week, so we're not going to talk about it. Meet Quen Agent World, where a native language world model simulates 7 agent environments within a single model. Environment modeling is the training objective from day one, not a post hoc adaptation. So this is kind of like, what would a world model for agents look like? So Alibaba released this last week, got a lot of attention. DeepSeek has released something. They published DSpark, a new speculative decoding method that boosts throughput by 51% to 400%. And then they've also open sourced DeepSpec, which is the training framework behind it. This is the real OpenAI. So DeepSeek is just releasing a lot of stuff in the open, which is great for others that are training models. And, mixture of agents is, this whole idea around like model routing, mixture of agents is a topic we're going to keep seeing more of. But this is from the team behind Hermes. It says the strongest models are gated and access is granted only to a select few. Hermes agent now exposes mixture of agents presets as virtual models, giving you capabilities beyond the publicly available frontier. So 8% higher than Opus 4.8 and 11% higher than GPT 5.5 on our upcoming benchmark. Now they don't
this
actually.
is a trend.
Yeah, they don't release the benchmark. They just say on this benchmark that we created that's upcoming. So like, I'm only give you partial credit here, but I do think that this is going to be a trend. I think you're going to see different tasks being routed to different agents. Probably like go to 5.6 or Opus 4.8 or Fable when it's available for these types of tasks, but these other type of tasks use GLM 5.2.
Yeah.
Or DeepSeek, right? And another like lower cost model that's still very intelligent, but maybe not quite at the frontier. And speaking of harnesses and other tools, AI SDK 7 is now available. So this was on June 25th. So they introduced reasoning control, agent level tool approval, tool and runtime context, file and skill uploads, MCP apps, durable workflows, terminal UI, sandbox support, harness integrations, telemetry, lifecycle events, and more.
Cool.
Looks
Already
like
had those.
yeah,
but
looks
all
like
right.
looks like they learned from some people. That's all
Yep.
we'll say. All right, Cognition. Speaking of like model routing, Cognition released this just today. It's a post on X that says conventional model routing sucks. It passes benchmarks but fails to write code you'd actually merge. Introducing Devin Fusion, a new hybrid model harness for agentic coding. In testing, it reduces the cost of Fable level intelligence by 35% and still feels good to use.
So this is our fifth one that's trying to do the same thing, right?
Yeah, Open Router, Factory. I mean, all these.
Sakana.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's just
trend.
mixture. Yeah, it's a mixture of not just mixture of models, but it's like, I mean, it is a mixture of models, right? A mixture of experts in a different way. It's routing tasks to the right model based on intent, based on, the types of tasks you're running. I think we're going to see a lot of people try to figure out how do we use all these different models for the tasks that they're best at and get cheaper costs while still maintaining the same level of intelligence.
Do you think it's about token spend, which is why this whole thing is happening? Or do you think actually people want to pick the right thing for the right task, like as an engineering problem? Or is it more so, like we need to start saving money?
Yeah, I think it's, I don't know. I think saving money is a big part of it. I think costs are huge. What do you think?
I think it's really because of the saving money problem, but also like, I think before this whole saving money narrative, people were just opusing everything, 5.5ing everything, even for checking out Git, right? And because, once you start spending tokens, if you had to spend $1.50 to check out Git and pull from main, you probably wouldn't spend that money, but you would pay a cent or two to DeepSeek to do it. Let's just say. And now that cost conversation is here, this mixture of models, mixture of agents, mixture of harnesses now becomes like at the forefront of you don't want to lose your power with the top models, but you don't need to use Opus to pull from GitHub. So why don't you use this instead? Like it makes a lot of sense to me. I'm not against it at all.
Yeah, I mean, Mika says, am I the only one that hates these fusion models? I don't think you're the only one, but I do think that it's not going to go away anytime soon. I do think that, so I was talking a lot with Tyler on our team about this, and his biggest concern with all this is, okay, well, if you route, let's say you have it do some coding tasks, and then you have it, okay, now I want to pull from main, and so then it uses a different model, but then you go back to a coding task. Well, now, if you're switching models, you're breaking prompt caching the whole way. And so the question is that actually saving you money to move to a lower level of intelligence? Maybe, but maybe not. And so I think that is the question that is still to be determined on all these, is if you're assuming that nothing was prompt cached, it probably saves you a ton of money. If you can leverage prompt caching, which is usually, sometimes only paying like 10 to 20% of the cost of the original, if it was uncached, well, then the value you're saving is less, or maybe even is slightly.
It's true.
Yeah, slightly more.
But
So I think there's
at some point the frontier is going to be no matter what expensive compared to switching.
So I think there's a lot we're going to see here. All right, so AI SDK Harness API now supports open code and LangChain deep agents through a single unified interface. This is a trend as well. We have this in Mastra. We support Claude agents. We support OpenAI. We support Cursor. I think that as we support ACP, so we can support all different types of coding agents. I think the idea is you might not just have one type of agent, right? You might have use different harnesses for different types of things as well. So not just mixture of models, but maybe mixture of harnesses
Yeah.
potentially.
Open code uses AICK, so that's like a cheat code. But yeah, good job on the LangChain one.
This came out yesterday. So introducing Tau, an educational agent harness that teaches you how to build agent harnesses. So very meta, but did get a lot of, if you want, I guess, to learn how to build agent harnesses with Tau, it got a lot of attention. So we're mentioning it here. All right, let's talk about agents. We talked about this last week. Claude Tag came out right before our show. We talked about it, but then it did kind of have its moment. It kind of went pretty viral. So Andrea Karpathy says this is a new paradigm for interacting with Claude that is significantly more in line with all the other human activity org-wide once you do all the under-the-hood engineering work to make this just work. And it's talking about just interacting with Claude in Slack. We've been talking about that a lot on the show, how we think that Slack and other tools like Slack are going to be the surface area you work with agents pretty frequently. We've supported agents in Mastra, or Slack agents in Mastra and channels for a long time because we believe this and we've seen it internally. We have a bunch of Mastra agents running around in our Slack doing different things. So I think it's inevitable. I thought this was a funny tweet from Ashwin Gop, I guess. Claude Tag is a Trojan horse, not because Anthropic is doing anything evil, because the incentives are obvious. Day one, this looks like a great feature. Tag Claude in Slack, let it follow the thread, remember context, break down tasks, chase work. And basically what this says is, as you use it, you basically become locked in. That Claude is your all your knowledge, all your company knowledge is now going to Anthropic. So it's like this Trojan horse that once you start using it, which is why, I would argue maybe you should own that layer using tools like Mastra.
Don't use it, because the next day they're going to make a company or a new product that's your product.
Yeah, then not exactly. Now they know exactly how you're using it, and they're going to make it better. But I do think that agents in Slack are here to stay. And friends over at Copilot introduced OpenTag. So a better open source Claude tag works with any model, any agent harness, and fully custom agents. So it's really just like Mastra has channels. It's a little bit more of a way to do that and connect. It's like a separate front end, I guess, for your different harnesses. So you can interact with other types of agents in Slack. So congrats to those folks over there. And finally, on this section, voice agents are now on Vercel. Real-time speech and transcription are now live on AI Gateway. Build with use real-time, generate speech, and transcribe on AI SDK 7. So voice agents are, I think they've been we have a lot of folks with Mastra building voice agents. I think they're relatively popular. I think a lot of people still think they're not quite there, but they are getting, I feel like there's a moment coming. It's getting closer.
Yeah. When we started working on voice 2 years ago now, almost, we worked on it too early, let's say.
Yeah, we invested a lot 18 months ago in voice.
But at least now it's paying off a little bit, even though it's not good enough. We have to make it better, but at least we had it, and now we have to keep investing in it.
Yeah, I think a lot of folks, if you're watching this, what do you think of voice agents? Are you using them? Are you building them? It would be interesting to hear how people are thinking about voice agents. So this is from Yosef Stampede AI. Says, I built a whole agent factory with Mastra and the channels object with Slack and Linear. It's 100x productivity and completely freed up the dev channel with bug tickets from the team.
That's dope, dude.
Yeah, awesome. That's cool to hear. All right, let's talk about infra.
My favorite topic.
And cost savings. This is somewhat related to the past thing. There's a trend that just keeps popping up in all these different sections. We could have made this one big section just calling, model routing, I guess, because this is a big part of it. But how to keep, this is from Brian Armstrong of Coinbase, how to keep AI spend flat while token usage grows exponentially, not with friction and spend alerts, with better defaults, routing, and caching. So in this post, Brian talks about how they really manage the cache, how they have a smart routing layer that once the cache times out, it might route you to a different model based on, what the request is, what the intent of the user behavior is. And you can see that the token spend or the tokens are still pretty high, but the costs are going down. So they basically cut their costs down while keeping the same amount of actual tokens. And this is Mark over at Coinbase says our AI spend is down half this quarter while token usage keep climbing. My team built the inference behind it, routing caching cheaper defaults and the spend services that track it. So they route everything through their own gateway. So they're all controlling this through their gateway, which is interesting. So it's almost like they built their own open router type product.
I think the comments of these tweets were like, do you know Open Router exists? Yeah, but Open Router is not your own company and your own infrastructure. So
yeah.
And a company like Coinbase can get crazy discounts. They could do it themselves and be okay.
Yeah, exactly. So we're talking about voice agents. I asked a question, and this is says I have built a harness that talks to my Codex and Claude code sessions using Mastra, and I could talk to it with voice through LiveKit. Nice. All right, Exa released Exa Connect, connecting agents to data beyond the public web. It's available today with ZoomInfo, Crunchbase, SimilarWeb, and many other leading data providers. I think, all these types of integrations and connectors and things like that are important. If you're building agents, you have to be able to get data and then use that data. So Exa is
another trend.
Yep, Exa is very much leaning into first search and now data and connections.
There's a lot of companies doing this connection game and gateway game and, many of these games. It is the Game of Thrones after all. So
A16Z said, I thought this was just pretty wild. We're thrilled to lead Marindale's $200 million seed round. Okay. That's not a seed round, but okay. And, of course, the credentials are really good. So that's why you can raise this, crazy amount. But they're building a system that can help anyone do AI work. They train frontier models that are expert at AI, R&D, and build the product around it. So we'll see if anything comes of it, but that is a wild raise for an AI company.
Dude, if you say you're training something, you get 100 mil. Like, that's just the base.
Yeah. All right, let's go through some quick hits. So this one is, a little bittersweet, but I think well received from everyone on the team. So this is from Aikido Security. NPM now freezes high-impact accounts for 72 hours after sensitive actions like an email swap or 2FA recovery code use. It's a direct response to the Axios and Mastra attacks. Changing the account email is how attackers cut off the real owner's recovery path. Now NPM catches it.
I'm proud of this one. We bitched on this show. We bitched online. We bitched on X. We bitched a bunch about how NPM sucks. And we also talked to our friends about how much they suck. And this was a good change. I'm curious. Like, I would like to think it's because of us. It's probably not. But it probably is, because why didn't they do it after Axios? Like, is it because of us that we were bitching so much?
Well, we were the straw that broke the back, so to speak, right? Yeah. It's just that and I think Axios and Mastra were probably the two biggest examples, but there were many other, I think, smaller scale examples that were similar patterns, right? We talked, it seems like every other week, almost every week, we're talking about some new supply chain attack. And I think this is one of the vectors that people would use. Yeah. And I'm very happy. Like, that's good. I wish it would have been done after the Axios one.
Yeah, it would have saved our ass.
Yeah.
It would have saved our ass.
But I am glad that they are paying attention. They are trying to make things better. I think with AI and with agents, things need to change on the security front. And, the only way to do that is to keep improving and adding some of these different levels of security. So very happy to see this one. The whole team was excited. We celebrated in our Slack.
Change can happen, guys.
We can do it.
If you complain enough, you'll get it.
All right. So this is from Meta. This is from the AI team at Meta. It says, we're sharing the next major milestone in our non-invasive brain to text decoder research. Brain to QWERTY v2. Building on v1, Brain to QWERTY v2 is the highest performing end-to-end pipeline capable of real-time sentence decoding from basically from your brain. So
Plug me in, coach.
yeah,
Plug me
you
in.
can just, you don't have to talk it, like we talked about like voice agents. If you want to talk to your coding agent, a lot of people are talking to it with Whisper or Super Whisper, whatever, all the different tools. Now you just think it.
Yeah. Dude, sign me up, man. Just plug me in like the Matrix.
Just hooked in. Let's
Hook
code.
me in. Dude, I want to get locked in.
That's the new definition of locked in.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know how this works. I don't know if it's like something that sits on your head. Like, I have no idea how it works. I haven't looked into it enough, but this is wild.
Maybe the Neuralink will actually hit production.
Yeah. All right. If you're listening in the chat, at what level until you would try this out? If there was a device a hat you could wear at home and you could talk directly to your coding agent, would you do it? Let's just assume it was just a hat, just some kind of hat. The hat you're wearing right now, Abhi. If you could put it on and talk to your coding agent, would you do it?
You know I'd do it. If I don't die, like I'm in for sure.
All right. I thought this was a wild story, so we included it here. Do you remember back a few months ago when there was like this Google Workspace CLI and it kind of came out of nowhere? Wasn't it really? It was announced by just one person. It was in the Google GitHub or Google Workspace devs or something GitHub. And everyone was so excited. It kind of went viral because of how good it was. And then this person got fired. Because apparently
this went viral on X too.
Yeah, because apparently, and rightfully so, you could argue like he went against the policies. I don't think he deserved to be fired because of that. Maybe hand slapped or whatever. But I think, there are policies in place at these big companies for a reason. You shouldn't be surprised when you just release something into the wild that's kind of under that brand. It looks like it's official. So I'm not actually surprised. I don't know if it was a calculated move on his part. He definitely got a ton of attention because it was really well done. The actual CLI itself was very well done. But he kind of did it behind the backs of the team. Overall, I definitely applaud him for releasing it because I think it was way better than anything else that was out there.
I think it's because he was a DevRel, and like some product manager, engineering manager got pissed. But the best thing about this CLI, if people don't remember, we were at the cusp of MCP versus CLI, tools versus CLI. Like all of this was in the zeitgeist at that time. He drops this. Steinberger also supports it. And then everyone started saying, why do you need MCP? You could just use a CLI. Like this was a pivotal moment for our industry in this year. And then they fired him. He made a movement, dude. Like everyone started doing CLIs.
Yep, he did. He was definitely a big part of that. And now it sounds like he's working on his own thing. I'm sure he has a lot of attention and distribution from what happened. So maybe he can leverage that into his own thing that he's working on. But yeah, he did a good job with the CLI. Yeah. I think and on the one hand, you do want DevRels to be releasing things, right? Like they should release demos and guides and things like and its own CLI. Maybe was a step too far, but also people loved it. So you had one person go off and do something great, and then the reward is they get let go. I can't imagine that sits well with others at Google to know that like if you don't follow, you have to follow the rules, which I get it on the one hand. You're a big company, but also it's not very empowering for folks that are on the team.
This is why we work at startups, right? Hey, if anyone knows Justin, tell him if he wants to make tremendously less money and join work with us. Like, let him know.
Yeah,
we're hiring him.
We are hiring. Come work with us, dude. We'll let you release all the stuff you want.
Yeah, dude. All the CLIs you want, dude.
And as the last thing, kind of as a capstone, we talked about GPT 5.6 at the beginning of the show around how the government is kind of holding back who gets access. This is a situation update. The Trump administration is close to allowing Anthropic to restore access to Fable 5, which has been offline for 15 days per Axios. Insiders expect the block to lift as soon as this week. I don't know if there's going to be like an allow list of companies, and then Anthropic and GPT-5.6 are given the same access to different companies and it's rolled out that way. Still don't like it because it means companies like ours or companies like, if you're watching this, probably like yours, don't have access.
Countries like Europe.
Yeah. Abhi, you're in Europe right now. You couldn't even use it probably even if you had access, right?
Yeah.
So I don't like it, but maybe more access is coming. Maybe eventually some of these things will be lifted, restrictions will be lifted, and we will all be able to experience the frontier again. But until then,
dude. I'm on team Terra. Let's go.
All right, thanks for tuning into the show. Follow us on X, Mastra. Go and follow us, Mastra-AI on YouTube. You can follow me on X, smthomas3. You can follow at Abhi Aiyer on X as well. We appreciate you watching the news, but the show is not done. As you can see up on the header, normally we end with the news, but today we started with it. Well, I guess it was kind of smashed in the middle, but we do have a guest. So let's go ahead and bring the guest on, and we will do a little intro and talk about who Ben is.
Like, share, and subscribe.
And follow us on X.
And tell your friends.
And their friends.
I mean, we're not begging.
Well, maybe a little bit.
Subscribe to Agents Hour every Monday, noon Pacific.
All right, so
what's going on, guys?
Hey, Ben.
Hey, Ben.
So to give a quick introduction to Ben's the co-founder and CTO of Mesa. Mesa's a versioned file system built for AI agents. They integrate with major AI frameworks and sandbox infra. It works with Mastra today. Kind of working on a first-class Mastra workspace integration as well. And I'm originally, Ben, I saw your co-founder launch tweet, and it just went pretty viral. It did really well, and so that's how I first heard about Mesa. So love to learn a little bit more, but maybe did I miss anything from the intro? What else can you tell us about Mesa?
No, that was perfect. Well, I'm stoked to be on. It's good to see you guys. Agent Power, my first time. I've got my my beverage, so I don't know if I'm supposed to take like one shot per minute or something, but
Yes.
I'm a co-founder of a company called Mesa. We build a versioned file system for AI agents. We play really nicely with a lot of AI frameworks, including Mastra, and so I'm stoked to talk more about it.
Yeah, so I think for those of you that have been watching, you've probably seen just a lot of different types of commentary and really like thought pieces around how agents should be using file systems, why a specific file system for agents is important. We've seen a few others kind of reimagine how this works, but can you tell me a little bit about how does Mesa work? Why is having a specific file system for agents important? And how does it under the hood? Tell us a little bit how it all functions.
Yeah, I think the first observation that we started with is that file systems have been a really important primitive of computing for at least 50 years now. And basically every operating system that you use is built around the idea that you've got this file system, which has got folders and files. And it's a very kind of a simple notion that lets you represent like a lot of different data types. And most programs today are built around the idea that they've got access to some kind of a file system. And so I think that's one of the reasons why most of the harnesses that you see today work really well with Bash and with the file system. And more, the AI model providers, whether that's Anthropic or OpenAI, have been RLing their models to work really well with Bash and with the file system. So I think that's kind of like the first observation that we started with. It turns out like file systems are just a really good primitive and they work really well with AI agents. But some of the limitations that we noticed were that more and more people were running their AI agents in environments where you didn't necessarily have access to the kind of persistent file system that you would expect. So on your laptop, you've got basically a hard drive, and that hard drive is what kind of persists all of your data. But when you're running an agent in the cloud, oftentimes you're running that in like a multi-tenant backend, or you might be running that in a sandbox. And so you don't have access to the same kind of persistent disk every time your agent spins up. And suddenly, if you've got a bunch of different agents running, you've got to worry about kind of like permissioning. So which agent has got access to which data? And if you've got multiple parallel agents running on the same data, that you might have to think about versioning. So how do you make sure that if I've got two agents that are both working on the same project, that they don't override one another and they're not constantly kind of conflicting? And so these are some of the problems that we set out to solve when we built Mesa. And so essentially what we've built is something that we think of as being a little bit like GitHub for all of knowledge work. And so we've basically got like a version control system that allows you to branch, so you can do drafts and approvals, but it feels just like a folder that you can connect to any application.
Which is dope.
Nice. So you're saying it's like completely version controlled essentially, but it's like a file system. All the agents can write to it, read from it, with a permissioning model, of course, and that way you can just basically build a base of knowledge, and it all lives in a accessible place. Nice.
Exactly.
And is there reasons? So what's, I've seen other people try to use Git and other types of, version control systems for this. Is there reasons why traditional Git doesn't foot the bill? Like, what are the reasons why it's not as good? What are some of the benefits of this approach versus trying to allow your agents just to read and write from Git?
Yeah, there are a few problems with Git. I mean, I think first and foremost, Git was just not designed for agents. And so the kind of like API surface is complex. But I think there are a number of other limitations that Git's got. So one of them is that Git doesn't work very well with large files. And so, you may have experienced this if you've ever tried to check in like an image or something like that to a Git repository. Git will tell you, I actually can't accept large files because it wasn't built to work with those. And so they're kind of like hacky sideband solutions that people use for this. One of the other problems with Git is that conflicts are not first class. So if you ever have had to deal with a conflict in Git, one thing that you realize is that it can be a real pain in the butt if you've got to, like, let's say, do a rebase through a whole bunch of commits. You as a human have got to look at every one of those commits. You've got to resolve all of those locally, and only then can you make progress on your branch. And then maybe the most important thing that we've seen lately is that the kind of model of Git is that you basically download the entire repository onto your machine before you can start doing work. But that's not really how agents work. So if, for example, you're running an agent in a multi-tenant backend or in a sandbox, the agent might just be looking at parts of a repository, and it might want to do like, minutes or even seconds of work at a time. And so if you've got to pay like a 30-second or 1-minute penalty to download a Git repository to do like a Git clone before your agent can start working, you're wasting a whole bunch of cycles.
But y'all sync back to those version control systems, right? Like, do you handle the workload on your end, and then you sync to the GitHubs, GitLabs, or whatever? Is that how? Because everyone's using these other products. Like, how does that work?
Yeah, so that's one of the choices that you've got. So, pardon me. So Mesa kind of owns the storage layer for you. So if you've got a product that doesn't need to be synced back to GitHub, you could just use Mesa as your storage layer. So in other words, you can create repositories which are basically the same as repositories in GitHub in the sense that they're just version directories. You can create those in Mesa. You can use Mesa on its own. But let's say you've got a coding agent use case, and your customers want your branches synced back to GitHub so that they can see PRs on GitHub. We've got kind of a background sync engine that'll sync to GitHub.
That's awesome, dude. That's awesome. I have a other question. It's not really, it's kind of about Mesa, but like you kind of like, you've evolved into this idea. And I was wondering from the previous, because like, I would love to understand the story of like before Mesa, there was something else. And like, how did that pivot happen?
Yeah. Yeah, there is a little bit of a backstory here. The backstory is that when we started Mesa, my co-founder and I started the company with the idea that GitHub was not built for the kind of coming age of agents. And there were a bunch of different respects in which we thought this was true. The first thing that I think a lot of people have come to believe recently is that GitHub wasn't engineered for scale. And so you can see GitHub's having all sorts of trouble with uptime these days. But I think like also we could see the GitHub UI was not really designed for the kind of super high volume agent driven workflows that people are dealing with now. So, it's not very good at rendering really large pull requests. It's got more AI features built in now, but they're not very good. Like GitHub's code reviewer has got a bunch of problems. It doesn't help you to like really understand a large diff quickly. And so we had tried a couple of different angles of attack on this problem where we said, well, if you were going to rethink GitHub from the ground up, like what would be the best place to start? And so actually, like early on in the company, we built a replacement UI that used GitHub's backend. And then we went and built a whole bunch of agents that sat on top of GitHub. So we built a code review agent, for example. It had a decent amount of traction building that. But like in the process of building those products, one of the things that we discovered is that actually like the GitHub backend was the thing that was holding us back the most. And even when we tried to go and build code review agents, the fact that we were forced to use the Git model, the fact that we were forced to sit on top of Git as the kind of version control primitive created a bunch of difficulties for us. And so we realized like maybe there was even bigger opportunity in rethinking what that storage layer looked like, and even going down to the level of like rethinking whether we should be using Git as the underlying kind of version control mechanism.
Yeah, dude, I remember, we've had many beers talking about this. Yeah, it's so cool to see the evolution, because I think this is the right problem to solve in the grand scheme of destroying Git. Like, I think this is the one that both resonates with agents, but also resonates with a bunch of people who are now experiencing where GitHub is failing us, And I don't think people will truly realize it until their agents realize it, because we're in that era where agents are kind of leading humans in these technological things. So, I mean, super sick. And I'm really glad that we have integration. I heard you have a demo.
I have got a demo. Let me go ahead and pull that up.
Yeah, we love, we love to see demos here. So always excited to see the demo.
Okay, awesome. Well, hopefully this gives you a sense of why we think Mesa is an important primitive and what kinds of things you can do with Mesa that you can't typically do.
And while you pull that up, if you are tuning in live, if you have questions for Ben, if you have questions about file systems for agents, if you have questions on what's the next evolution of Git, ask away in the chat. We'll pull it up, post the demo once the demo's done.
Awesome. So I built a little demo app here the other day, and what I want to show you is kind of like an AI financial analyst. So what do I call it? CFO command center. So, you could imagine maybe you're building an agent for your finance team or for your CFO, and your CFO's got some big data room with a whole bunch of documents. And those documents might be a combination of like PDFs. So these could be like contracts, they could be customer case studies, a whole bunch of different things. And you've probably also got some like Word docs, you've got some Excel docs, and you've got some CSVs. And so, these are the kinds of, let's say like workspaces or data rooms that like non-technical people on your team are dealing with every day. And so you might want to give them an agent to help them do their job. And so like the first thing that I want to show you is just the way that you can connect a typical agent to a repository, or in other words, like just a version folder in Mesa. So we've all, probably seen these kind of chat UIs. And so I've got a CSV in here that's like a list of kind of imaginary vendor contracts. And so, I might want to ask my agent where we can optimize our vendor spend. And you can see as my agent works through this problem, it's just going to be using bash. And it's, simply making calls like ls to list the results of a directory. It can like cat to see the contents of a file. It can use all of the kind of standard bash commands. And what's cool is when you're using Mesa, you can either mount Mesa as like a POSIX file system in a sandbox. And so in other words, it's like a fully native directory, or you can run Mesa in process. And in this case, I'm running Mesa in process. And so you've kind of got a choice depending on whether or not you need a full sandbox environment. But I think we've all seen kind of flows like this. This is relatively straightforward, and you can do this with a lot of different backing file systems. I think where Mesa gets really interesting is with some of our version control primitives. And so, one thing that we've heard from a lot of people is that more and more people want to run agents in parallel. And so there are different reasons you might want to do this. One reason is that you've got agents working on different tasks and you want them, but those tasks might involve the same documents. Another reason is that you might want to explore a bunch of different paths and then accept one and discard some of the others. And so I'll just show you a really simple version of this. So you might have noticed that in these mock vendor contracts, we had our SOC 2 compliance done with Delve. And so we realized we actually need to replace Delve with Vanta. And so I'm going to ask my agent to go ahead and do that replacement. But in this case, instead of just launching one agent, I'm going to launch 3 parallel agents to all work in the same problem. And we'll see which one gets us the best result. And so under the hood, what's going on is Mesa has got Git-like branching primitives. And so in essence, we're going to kind of fork our file system 3 different ways. Each agent's going to get its own isolated copy of the file system, and it's going to be free to like modify documents, look at whatever documents it wants to. And of course, it can use standard bash commands. And again, in this case, this is running all in process. But if you wanted to, you could mount Mesa in a sandbox. And I think my 3 different agents here are just different Claude models. So I've got Haiku, Sonnet, and Opus. And when these guys finish working, I'll be able to see the kind of before and after. So I'll see the diff. And you can imagine rendering this in a richer way. In this case, I just went for kind of a simple line level diff, but it would be pretty easy to render kind of like, a rich table if I wanted to and show the differences. And we can see like the cheaper, faster agent, it gave me a diff. It did replace Delve with Vanta, but it looks like it made some kind of formatting changes that maybe I didn't want. And then my Sonnet agent got a pretty good diff, and so did my Opus agent. And so it looks like these 2 guys ended up with about the same thing. And when I'm done and I'm happy with the changes that my agents made, I can now basically go from draft mode into kind of like an approved final state and to emerge much the same way that I would do in Git. And if I go ahead and refresh my vendor contracts, you can see that we've replaced Delve with Vanta. And so this is kind of an example of some of the flows that you can get into with Mesa that you wouldn't be able to do with a traditional file system. And I got to figure
That's
out
really
how to stop
cool.
sharing my screen.
That's really cool. Now for like a coding, dude, that was awesome, by the way. For a coding agent example,
I appreciate
let's say I'm not using Git anymore. I'm not using GitHub. I'm not using Git. I'm just using Mesa. I have my code base in Mesa, and let's say me, my coworkers are all tackling maybe the same file but different parts of it in our own work and stuff. And our agents are writing, but they're branching before they write. And like, how does this like merge process work in this world where like we do want to merge all of our changes, but like, is there this whole rebase concept, or like, how's that going on?
Yeah, so I think you can think of Mesa's versioning model as being like very similar to Git's in the sense that you've got kind of like a change, like kind of chain. So in other words, you've got like snapshots of your folder that we build up over time, and we're storing it in an efficient way. But at any time, you don't have to have just a linear history. You can do these kind of like forks. And so every one of those forks is like a kind of a valid candidate, but probably, you've got kind of like one mainline set of changes that represents the canonical state of your documents. And so, the workflow is very similar to what you might do with Git and GitHub. I think what's really interesting and different here is that, first of all, Mesa is optimized for programmatic use. And so if you want to build not just use your own coding agents, but build an agentic application, Mesa is really well set up to do that. I think the second thing that's really interesting is that you don't have to do a full clone before you mount a Mesa repository. So in other words, we kind of have this like lazy materialization. So you could imagine you might have like a really large workspace or a massive monorepo that could take a really long time to clone. I was working on the Mastra repo today, and I mean, like the Mastra repo is pretty significant. So even that takes maybe 30 seconds or a minute to clone.
Yeah.
And so if you imagine an agent, like your CodeRabbit agent reviewing pull requests in Mastra, probably it's got to spend, before it reviews a pull request, if it's looking at the entire repository, it's got to spend the first minute before reviewing any of your code, just cloning that repository. And so that's one of the problems that we solve. Yeah, there are a few other interesting things that we can do. So, I can talk about some of these things, but we've got kind of like real-time features. So in other words, sometimes you want to be able to like observe an agent session in real time. But I think broadly, like the focus here is just on solving the problem of how you can run massively parallel agents.
Yeah, like I see like, okay, so for example, everyone's using work trees now, right? But work trees are just like, honestly, they're like clones. And if you're working in a big repo, that work tree is expensive. And now you have 10 work trees, and now you're running out of disk space because you're just work treeing everything. And so in Mesa, this is not a work tree. This is a snapshot of something you touch. Is it only based on what you're editing that the snapshot, or like this whole, like, sorry, walk me through like what that would look like in Mesa instead of using like a Git work tree.
Yeah. Well, I think the first thing to say is that today Mesa is really optimized for use as like infrastructure. So we're not even necessarily telling people like to go and replace GitHub with Mesa. Like if you're using GitHub for your own software development, I think maybe eventually we'll go there. But today the real focus is on like the kind of infrastructure use case. But yeah, like the Mesa model of the world would be that instead of having to think about kind of like work trees, you would just say like I want to create basically a copy of this directory. You could give it some other kind of like a name, much the way that you would a work tree, but it's a lot lighter weight because work trees, while they don't store a full copy of your version history, they do still store like a full copy of your documents. And so they can be pretty expensive. And the Mesa model here is that we want to be really smart about what data you fetch. And so like in the same way that when you use iCloud or you use Dropbox, you might have like a massive amount of data in that kind of drive. So like your iCloud, your Dropbox, your Google Drive could have like a terabyte of data in it, and not all of that data is going to be pulled onto your laptop. But it feels like it's just a regular folder on your laptop.
Yeah.
You can do the same thing in Mesa. So we're doing this kind of like smart partial materialization that's mostly transparent to you as a user.
And agents can materialize as they discover. Like if they decide they need a folder, they can materialize it and then keep going. Oh, I'm about to play with this.
Exactly. And the agent doesn't even have to tell you that like it wants that folder. It can just say list the folder. And I mean, this is kind of the beauty of being like an actual virtual file system, not just a CLI. Like if we were a CLI just like Git, your agent would have to, check to see if the folder exists, then maybe like query an API to say I want to pull this down. But because we're sitting at the like file system layer, because we're talking directly with the kernel, all you have to do is ask for a file, like list a repository. We've already fetched all the metadata. And then kind of like just in time, if we haven't already cached the data for that file or folder, we can pull that down from the cloud.
That's awesome. That's cool.
That's cool. All right, we are talking with Ben Warren, so from Mesa.dev. Go check it out if you are curious about file systems for AI agents. Ben is the best place to follow you at BWARRN on X. I think that's right. You can go to Mesa.dev.
That'll work.
All right. Any final words before we wrap up?
Any final words? I'm super excited for the kind of like first class integration that we're about to launch with Mastra. You can use Mesa with Mastra today. I think it's a really awesome pairing, but I think it's going to be even better when we've got like a really tight integration with Mastra Workspace. So I think there's a lot of cool stuff coming down the pipe. And yeah, obviously sign up for the waitlist if you want to get early access. Follow me on X. Had a great time chatting.
Yeah, awesome, dude.
All right,
this
Ben.
is awesome. We're gonna play with it too.
Yeah, thanks for coming on the show.
Sick. Have fun, guys.
Peace.
Every week in AI, something insane happens.
And there's so much drama. Every Monday, we break it down live.
We do the news, we bring on guests building in the space.
And we go deep into the stuff that actually matters.
Agents Hour, every Monday, noon Pacific.
Follow. Don't miss it.
Peace.
Get involved.
So Lemmy in the chat said this Cloud FS concept is going to be huge. This is the way. I built something similar, but much less ambitious on top of Convex. Yeah, that was a cool segment.
Yeah, dude. I'm gonna be playing. Well, we're building cloud agents right now, and I do not want to do work trees the conventional way. So I'm gonna be building some cool shit.
Yeah, it kind of comes full circle. We were talking about building a software factory. We mentioned that we're doing a lot of things to automate different parts. And, we are building agents that are built on top of Mastra primitives that run in the cloud. And we're making some of these decisions today. So cool timing. I mean, and there's, if you're interested in agent file systems, there's a whole bunch of different types of providers out there. But Mesa seems like a really cool product. All right. We've been going. It's been almost, 70, 80 minutes, something like that. It's been a good show. We talked about building software factories. We talked about all the AI news, GPT 5.6, and all the other things that have been happening in the world of agents over the last week, which is, as it is every week, a lot. We talked with Ben from Mesa.dev. It's a good show, dude.
Yeah, dude, it was good. It was weird having the news in the middle, but
Yeah.
good nonetheless.
Yeah, now we got to figure out like what's the new send off. Normally it's just the final
Yeah.
slide. Let's call it. But if you are watching this, thank you for watching. Please go give us that 5-star review. Only 5 stars. If you want to give us a 4-star or less, find something else to do. That's okay. You don't have to. But if you're really feeling up for it, give us that 5-star review. Go to GitHub, give us that star. You can follow Abhi or myself on X and other places as well. I think that's the show.
That's the show.
That's a wrap, dude.
Peace.
See ya.
Yo, that show's a wrap. We were live in the zone. AI agents out with Shane and Abhi on the throne. Did you give us that review? Only if it's a 5. Jump on the tube, make sure to like and subscribe. Yeah, news so fresh, yeah, we keep you in the loop. Guests so fly, they bring the whole troop. AI on the rise, don't miss this power. Welcome to the show, it's AI Agents Hour. Did you just drop in? Is this your first time? Make sure to follow us on X and go like and subscribe. Yeah, learn the principles and patterns in our books. The Mastra.ai site, give it a look. Yeah, news so fresh, yeah, we keep you in the loop. Guests so fly, they bring the whole troop. AI on the rise, don't miss this power. Welcome to the show, it's AI Agents Hour. This is the end, we all wrapped up. Another showdown, another one coming up. AI Agents Hour's done, but the news doesn't cease. Shane and Abhi, we out of here. Peace.